I was doing a benefit for Carol Channing's Foundation for the Arts. Carol was in the audience, and I was on stage as Carol, and I'm telling how she got started in show business, but as Carol. And I said I was standing on stage of the Curran Theater in San Francisco, and I knew I was standing on holy ground. And from the audience, she goes, "It's hallowed ground." Of course, my heart stopped. And of course, everybody in the room then knew that Carol Channing was in the audience. And that was crazy.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Left of Straight Show interviews. And today I am so happy to have in studio with me the amazing Mr. Richard Skipper is here. He's a one-of-a-kind entertainer, interviewer, and storyteller whose work celebrates Broadway, cabaret, and the art of connection. Richard's known for creating live experiences that feel personal, spontaneous, and joyfully theatrical. His Richard Skipper Celebrates shares the careers and contributions of iconic entertainers and important figures in the arts. The show's been a long-running celebration of theater history, show business, and personalities who've helped shape the entertainment industry. From his own acting and performing to portraying and becoming real-life friends with the iconic Carol Channing, we're going to talk about all that, his recent experiences, and the podcast present show that he remains active and passionate as ever with. Please welcome to the studio for the first time, Mr. Richard Skipper. Richard, how are you, sir?
Well, after that introduction, how could I be anything but great?
Well, it is amazing to get you. We've been talking for a while to get you on here. You were generous a couple weeks ago to have me on your podcast. You are no stranger to this business of show and talking to people. So thanks again for that. That was a wonderful time.
Well, thank you. Thank you for coming on.
Well, let's go ahead and start at the beginning. Tell me, how does a South Carolina boy get pulled into performing of all things?
How long is this program? Well, I'll give my age. I just turned 65, and therefore I'm a boomer, and I'm a product of 1960s and 70s television. I grew up at a time where the variety show was the most popular shows on TV, that and Westerns, and I opted for the variety show. And that was the show business that I wanted to be a part of. I saw people singing and dancing, and if, as I say in my show, if I could have jumped into the TV screen, that's exactly what I would have wanted to do. I got involved with my local theater company when I was 13 years old. And I was also reading a book, and the book is The Magic of Believing by Claude M. Bristol. That should tell you everything you need to know about me as a kid. So I'm reading this book, and in the book, Claude Bristol says, set your mind on a goal like a homing pigeon and go after it with dogged determination. I don't know what possessed me. August 5th, 1974, I'm reading this book. I closed the book and I went in and said to my parents, 5 years from today, I'm going to New York. And they laughed. It's true story, true story. And they said, of course you are, of course you are. So every year on August 5th, I would go 4 years to go, 3 years to go, 2 years to go. My parents never believed for a moment that I would leave my hometown. I grew up in a little town called Conway, South Carolina, on a tobacco farm just outside of Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. And very few people leave these small towns.
Right.
They're born there. They go to school there. They get married there. They have children there, not always in that order. And they live their lives and they die there. And for some people, I'm not knocking that at all. For some people, that's perfectly fine within the confines of what their lives are. But I wanted something more than that. And so the last year that I was in South Carolina, I saved up $500. I bought a one-way ticket to New York, $86.75. Piedmont Airlines, which doesn't even exist anymore. And I got on the plane and I flew to New York one way and I never looked back.
Now, was it then totally the power of positive thinking, or were you making plans along the way? It sounds like you were power positive thinking, then day before decided to buy the ticket. How did that, what was
No,
your
no, no. It
preparation
wasn't
for it?
the day before. I made up my mind 5 years to the date that I was going to come to New
Right.
York. And from that point on, once I made up my mind, I would go to the library in my hometown. Every Saturday, I would get the New York Times, and
Okay.
the arts and leisure section had everything that was happening on Broadway. That was where I wanted to go. And so I read every book that I could get my hands on about the industry and how things worked. And you can't believe everything you read in a book.
True.
So when I got to New York in '79, you have to realize it was a very different New York from what it is now. The New York that I
Right.
came to, and I say this in my show, I imagined a New York of breakfast at Tiffany's, Sunday in New York, barefoot in the park. And when I arrived in New York, it was Midnight Cowboy, Taxi Driver, and cruising.
Right.
Very different New York. New York, this was right on the heels of President Ford telling New York City to drop dead. You may remember that
I do.
when New York said that they needed a bailout. And it was a very scary, dark town that I arrived in.
Right.
Tell you something, Scott. I miss it. I miss what that world was like
You like
because
that grit, huh? I love
it
that.
had a grit. It had a character that I feel that is missing. Everything now is so generic, and
Yeah.
there's a sameness about everything that was missing. And of course, when you're 18 years old and you're in a strange place and it's completely foreign to everything that you've grown up with, you also experience and see the world through very different eyes. So it was a very um, scary but exciting time for me.
Have you stayed in the relatively same area? I mean, New York, it's like a process, it sounds, ever find a new apartment. And and the prices go up if you decide to ever change. But have you stayed in the same relative space, or talk
Oh,
about?
no, 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 no. When I first came to New York, and there's a very interesting story about the day that I arrived. I knew of this guy
Right.
through mutual friends, this guy, David Johnson. And I reached out to David Johnson knowing that he was in New York. He was from my hometown. And I wrote him a letter. And what I'm about to tell you, I swear to God, is a true story. So I wrote him a letter and I said I was coming to New York and I wanted to know if there were any YMCAs near where he lived because I had heard that when a young man came to New York, he went to the YMCA. That's how naive I was.
I love
So,
that.
it's true. It's true. There's, he didn't get back to me right away. And then that was like in around Christmas time. My birthday's in February. So on my 18th birthday, I got his phone number and I called him. And he said, "Oh, I got your letter. I meant to call you, but I lost it. Listen, you're going to need a job. I could use a good intern in my company, and I have a place to stay. And so you can stay with me." The day arrived, August 5th, '79. I arrived in New York. He was not able to pick me up at the airport. That should have been the first of many red flags. And then when I got to the apartment, that first night I was in New York, he was packing his duffel bag to go and stay with a friend. And he said, "You have the place to yourself." And the last thing he said as he walked out the door was, "By the way, tomorrow you'll be meeting Brad and Lisa." And I said, "Who are Brad and Lisa?" And he said, "They're my roommates." And I said, "Do they know I'm coming here? Because you haven't said anything to me about them." And he said, "They're going to love you." So so he left. There I was, my first night in New York. I'm alone. So then I cried myself to sleep that night. I'm not ashamed to tell you that. And I woke up the next morning and the apartment was a railroad flat. Do you know what that is? A railroad flat is an apartment. I mean, there were a lot of pre-war apartment buildings. And so a railroad flat are rooms connected to one another. So to get from one apartment to the other, it's like walking through, almost like walking through a railroad. So a train. So I'm going to the bathroom, and as am walking to the bathroom, I walk through Brad and Lisa's bedroom, and they are doing what comes naturally. And Lisa sat up, and I don't know how graphic I can be with you, but Lisa sat up and said, "Who the f are you?" And and Brad said, "Well, hello there." And 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 I said, "I'm David's new roommate." And Lisa said, "Over my dead body." And I went into the bathroom and I sat on the side of the tub and I had my second cry in less than 24 hours. What am I doing? Who are these people? And Brad came and knocked on the door and said, "Come out, let's talk." And I told him my whole story and that David and I had been corresponding for several months. And they said, "We've never heard about you. We don't know who you are. And you can't stay here." And they told me how to find David. I went. It turns out that David didn't even have his own business. He was an intern. So I go to where he was working. We went to a little coffee shop and he said, "You need to find a job." And he said, "We're not going to throw you out on the street. So don't worry about that. You can stay with us until you get on your feet." And so I went out. I got my first job. He said, "Get the Village Voice." There were ads on the back of the Village Voice. Go through the Village Voice and circle everything that said no experience necessary. And the first place I went to, I told them that I had just arrived in New York the day before. I didn't know anyone. I didn't know anything. No experience necessary. That's me. And I need a job. And I got it as a messenger for $6 an hour.
Oh, wow.
And so I came back. I was so excited that night that I had a job. And we sat around the kitchen table and they told me, Lisa said, "You can stay here with a few caveats." And I essentially became a houseboy. I ended up doing the laundry. I was doing the cleaning. I was doing the shopping. I was doing everything just to make, to have a place to stay. 3 weeks later, I come back and they were going through the want ads looking for an apartment. It turns out that the apartment was a sublet. It wasn't even their apartment. And I had found an apartment immediately. So I ended up moving in with this guy that I was working with. His mom had just recently passed away. And now this was September 15th. So I was there almost a little over a month. And so I moved in with this guy, Hank Navola, and I stayed with him until the following February. And then I moved in with this woman that I had met, and she was looking for boarder for the house, and I stayed there for the next 5 years. And then once I began to find myself and to really become who I am, um, I was spending more and more that was in the Bronx, by the way, and I was spending more and more time in Manhattan. And so I eventually moved into Manhattan, and I went from roommate to roommate to roommate over the course of the believe it or not, for the next, 4 or 5 years. And then I met my husband, and, we've been together 36 years, and so I've been in this house 36 years now, same
That's
location.
amazing. I love those stories. Thank you for sharing that. Oh my goodness. That's a
All
scary
true.
start. Oh my goodness. Wow. I want to start getting into the entertainment of it all, but talk to me. I mean, obviously you have the singing, dancing, acting of it all you see coming from South Carolina, but you become such a unique and powerful storyteller. Where did the storytelling aspect come from? Was that in your family or just something that you gravitated to naturally, or talk about the storyteller that is Richard Skipper?
I am the complete opposite of every single member of my family. I mean, I'm the oldest of 4. My dad was one of 11. My mom was the oldest of 16. So I come from a huge family on both sides, and none of them, I mean, idea of speaking in front of an audience or doing those things is just so far into all of them. But I loved acting, and I did that for so many years. And then I got into the world of cabaret. And when I first started in cabaret, believe it or not, I started out as Judy Garland, as a lot of gay men do, that in cabaret. But I did my own singing, and I wanted to show a very positive, upbeat version of Judy.
Right.
And believe it or not, that's not what people want to see. And so it was a tough hill to climb. And then when I started performing as Carol Channing, that was when my career really took off. And one of the things that it was so easy for me to hide behind that facade. And I told her stories on stage. But so that's, I guess that's where the storytelling really came from.
Okay.
I felt like it was so easy for me telling someone else's stories through the lens of how I perceive those stories, if that makes sense to you.
No, it
And then
does.
when I stopped performing as Carol, so many people were saying to me, "You've got so many stories to tell. You should put them in a show." So what I started doing is before my shows, I pass out question cards to the audience, like these little cards here. And so I don't even know what they're going to ask me. I don't see any of the cards before the show. So I really am doing every show like I'm walking a high wire act. My husband screens the cards. He knows the best stories that I'm going to tell. Some stories surprise him even after 36 years, but he screens the cards. He puts them on the piano face down. I know what songs I'm going to sing. Those are my buffers that get me from point A to point B and beyond. But what I have a real gift for is how I'm going to connect the next song to the story that I'm telling. So it seems effortless to the audience that I've gone from telling a story about growing up on a tobacco farm to singing Broadway Baby, for example. So I never know what stories are going to get me there. All I know is that I'm going to get there. It's like getting in a car.
Yeah.
When you get in a car, you know where you're going, but you don't necessarily know what you're going to encounter on your way to the destination. Are you going to deal with traffic? Are you going to deal with a lot of traffic lights? Are you going to deal with an accident on the side of the road? You never know. That's life. And that's how that's how these shows unfold for me.
Nice. That's so amazing. I love that. Did you have, I mean, obviously you talk about doing Judy and doing Carol. Were they part of your repertoire of people, artists who influenced you early on? Or was it really those more traditional entertainers and variety show? Who was your earliest influences in entertainment?
Well, both, yeah, absolutely, Judy Garland and Carol Channing. I was 8 years old when Judy died. And, one of the funny stories I tell in the show is that when I found out that Judy had died, I threw myself on the floor and started screaming, "I can't go on." And my and my mom said, "You don't even know this woman." But I grew up with the annual showings of The Wizard of Oz year after year after year. So it wasn't that Judy Garland had died. It was that Dorothy had died.
Right.
And that was the mindset of an 8-year-old child. And I think if I remember back in my life, I had an uncle that had died, a great uncle, and I remember seeing him and it freaking me out. Because in the South, I don't know if this is the way it is where you are in other places, but they bring the body home and people come to the house and they sit around and have a wake. And the whole idea of that made me, I mean, I screamed. I couldn't stand it. And then when Judy died, it was the finality of someone's life being cut short like that. And believe it or not, to this day, I have this very, I know this sounds woo woo and strange to you, but I have this heightened sense of how fragile our lives are. And that's why I try to do the best I can with every single day that I'm given. And it goes back to this positive energy that you talked about earlier. And then Carol Channing was just one of those. I used to perform on the front steps of my high school, and I would do these lunchtime concerts, which are still legendary. I went back to my 40th class reunion a few years ago, and that's what everyone talked about. These concerts that I would come out and I would mimic everything that I saw on television the night before, whether it be Archie and Edith from All in the Family, or Saturday Night Live was popular at that time, Sonny and Cher, Donnie and Marie, and of course, Cal Burnett. I just mimicked what I saw on television. And I guess that's where it all started for me. Just getting there and saying, well, wait do you hear this? When do you see this? Did any of you see this last night? And that's, and it's the same energy that I have in my shows to this day.
I love that. Now, when did interviewing enter the picture, and has that changed your performing style? I mean, you're already answering questions on the cuff, and now you're bringing people in that you admire or want to share. How did the interviewing start, and how did that kind of change you, if at all, in your style of interacting with audiences?
Many years ago, I started doing a series in New York on stage, a live interview where I would bring a celebrity in and we would sit. And how I was able to get these celebrities is I would reach out to them and say, all of the proceeds will go to the charity of your choice. And I was not making any money on this. Every penny went to whatever the charity was. And I started doing those. And then I started doing a series, Richard Skipper Celebrates, which is where this all came from, a blog that I did. I started doing this blog and I was looking for a title. And a friend of mine suggested Richard's Rants and Raves. And then someone pointed out, you're always raving about people, but you're not really ranting. And so I said, you're absolutely right. And I got to thinking about this. My grandmother, my dad's mom, she celebrated every holiday. Everything was a big event. Christmas, Easter, thanks, everything, she pulled out all the stops. And I remember that. And so I started calling my business Richard Skipper Celebrates. And I did a series for a while where I would have 5 guests in the show. And we would, whatever that date was, I would look at people who were born on that date, people who passed away on that date, world events, movies, Broadway shows that open. And I would reach out to my guest and say, could you do a song sung by this person or written by this person or from this movie or something that happened on that date? And these shows became very popular in New York. And I did that for about 3, 4 years. And then a little thing called COVID happened. And when COVID happened, it's like, what's going to get me through this? And I wanted to do basically a phone in program where people would call in. I would have a celebrity. And the first person I reached out to was Leslie Ann Warren. And, and I had interviewed her before live on stage. And she was my first guest. And then COVID hit literally right after we did the interview. And when all through COVID, I was doing an interview every single day and one-on-one interviews. And I did almost 1,000 interviews during that period. And it was a lot of work. Well, Scott, it's
I did the same thing. I went 5 days a week when COVID hit. So yeah, but there was nothing else out there.
No, it was it. It was the research. I read every book that if I had an author on, if it was a celebrity, I'm not interested in gossip. There are thousands of podcasts that do that. And there are a lot that do it well. And there are a lot that, well, you and I both know. So I'm not interested in gossip. I'm interested in what makes a person tick. How did this person get from point A to B and beyond? What makes them interesting? What made them wanted to go into this business? One of the things that I love doing is going back to their 5-year-old self. That's before life begins to tell them who they are, what they are, who they should be, who they shouldn't be. It's like I said to you before coming online today, that someone, sent me a note about using an AI generated profile picture. And I do it only for the fun of it. I'm not going to put anyone out of work because there are graphic designers that I work with. But for me to do that every single day would be cost prohibitive for me.
Right.
You know that.
Sure.
Um, and you may be rolling in money from uh, podcasts. I'm not. And so, but what is it about us as a culture where we are interested in basically the bad things that happen to people instead of celebrating them for who they are and what I call their body of worth? And that's basically the crux of everything that I do. How can I be of service to you? And the interviews are about the people that I'm interviewing.
Well said. I love that. I'm the same way. I've been doing this for 11 years now, and the luxury I turned down, which I'm sure you have, turned down lots of money and sponsorships to do the people that I want to talk to. If I don't want to talk to you, you're not going to be on this show. So the first 5 years, I was scrambling, reaching out to everyone I wanted to talk to, or maybe knew, or connection. And then, as you know, the more you do this, people start reaching out to you and want to be on the show, and it's a luxury to be able to say no because it's just something I'm either not good at or don't have an interest in. So I
Well,
love
I'll
that.
tell you, during COVID, I had a comedian booked on the show. And once I started doing the research on the comedian, we were on absolutely opposite ends of the spectrum politically. And I thought, I don't want to give this person a platform. So I reached out to the publicist and I said, I'm sorry, but I need to cancel this interview. And the publicist called me immediately and said, do you want to reschedule? And I said, no, I don't. And he said, well, why are you making this decision? And I said, well, and I was honest. I said, we are absolutely on opposite ends of the spectrum politically, and I don't want to give him a platform. And he said, that's career suicide. And I said, it may be, but it's my name, it's my brand, it's what I put out in the world. And I'm not going to endorse somebody or something. You know, believe it or not, I operate from a moral compass. And I also do not want to alienate the audience that I've built up. And you don't either. So you know what your brand is, you know what you have to offer, and you need to stay in that lane. Otherwise, I mean, it's great to experiment once in a while and maybe step out and push the envelope. I don't have a problem with that, but I'm not going to push an agenda that is against the very core of what I believe in.
That's exactly right. I mean, and you talk about the authenticity of it all. Your audience is going to know that that's not what your beliefs are. They're a lot of them are in the same system you are. They're not going to want to hear from that person either. So, yeah, wise move. And I do think they try to intimidate you into doing the interview. And it's like, no, not going to happen. So I love that. I remember, what was your hardest interview? My hardest interview, and I've told the story many times, but fantastic Margaret Cho, funny woman, talented as all heck. First time I had her on the show, she I told you I told you that I pride myself in research. Now she was the one that got me there. She was relatively early on in my podcasting. She had very clipped two-word answers to everything. Yes, no. And so I thought what I had was an hour's interview worth of questions. We were done in 22 minutes. And it's just because she was a little nervous. She was really used to anyone that she wasn't really familiar with. And she's come on 5 times since, and we have a great time now. But I learned a lot from that first interview because it's like I didn't know. That's why I learned research. I need to have 3 hours worth of questions for someone's going to say yes and no for the first 100 of them. So, who is your toughest interview, and who is your favorite interview?
Well, I always loved talking to Leslie Ann Warren. I mean, I grew up watching Cinderella. So when I got that first interview with her, that was just great. I've interviewed her several times and I just did an event with her. You know, this is the 50th anniversary of Clue. And she's been doing a tour around the country. They show the film. She does a Q&A with the audience. And I reached out to the producer, who's also a friend of mine. And I said, who's going to interview her when you get to New York? And he said, well, normally we bring in like, you know, a celebrity or someone. There's no money involved, but let me speak to Leslie. And within 5 minutes, he wrote back and she said yes. So she knew what she was getting with me, which makes it fun also. And so always Leslie Ann Warren. I'm not going to mention the name, but I had a celebrity booked on the show and he was technologically challenged. And so in the time frame to get on the show, he kept getting more and more frustrated. He just could not make it work. And again, this was early on in COVID. I'm sure that, he's much better now than it was then. But he started screaming. He started cussing at me. It was like, I held my own. I was very calm. And I said, listen, this is for you. And if you're not having a good time, it's not going to benefit me either.
Right.
And why don't we just call it a day? And when and if the time arrives, we'll do the interview later on. That interview never happened, and we never did make it up. And I don't regret the fact that we didn't make it up because it was obvious he didn't want to do it. And when you've got someone who doesn't want to be there, that energy is going to come right through the screen.
Yeah. We're going to trade names later. I had one of my toughest interviews, or once I had a very well-known LGBTQ theater person that came on and was the same thing, very flustered in the technology and basically broke down sobbing. And it was just so hard for them to come back. It made me like a wreck. And it was one of the toughest interviews I ever went through, but
Wow.
we'll compare names later. But talking about these
Off the
great
screen.
people, let's get into the Carol of it all. I mean, it's tough to meet your heroes, they say. Talk about your time getting to know Carol. What was it about her that made you think this is someone I want to be friends with besides the legend that is Carol? And what is something that made her want to remain friends with you that was the Richard of it all that she fell in love with?
Well, I'll go back to those lunchtime concerts that I used to do on the steps of Conway High School. Carol was one of those voices that I used to do to the best of my ability at 16 and 17 years old. So when I moved to New York, there was a place called the Piano Bar, which was at 67th and Broadway, and every Thursday night was their Broadway night. And I would go in and I would get up, open mic, and sing. And one night, some friends of mine were visiting from South Carolina, and they told the guy who was playing there, Houston Allred, that I performed as Carol Channing. And he got a big charge out of this. And mind you, at this point, I'm 19 years old. So, but he talked me into it. And I got up and I performed the Hello Dolly title song with waiters and the whole Megillah. And the place went crazy. So every time that I would come in, he would ask me if I could stick around and close the night out. And I started getting known for this in New York. Never, ever, ever thinking that I would have a career performing as Carol Channing. And for those listeners, just put in Richard Skipper as Carol Channing, Google it, and you'll see the images and you'll see the work that we did. But I started doing this at parties. But I loved her. I was a huge fan of hers. She was this iconic figure that was out there. Then move ahead many years. Events happened that led to my performing as Carol, and my career took off. And I went to Atlantic City, and I was headlining there. And I found out that the New York City Gay Men's Chorus was going to be honoring Jerry Herman, and that Carol Channing was going to be performing there. So this is before the internet. I started writing letters. I started making phone calls to the New York City Gay Men's Chorus artistic director. Everything landed on deaf ears. The term we now call ghosting, but no one responded. No one responded to any email. I mean, any phone call. There were no emails, phone calls, letters, deaf ears. So a friend of mine called me up and he said, "What are you doing Sunday night, the night of the concert?" And I said, "I'm going to be at home watching television." He said, "So you're not going to the concert?" And I said, "I don't think I could go and enjoy myself because the fact that no one even took the time to reach out to me made me feel, really low down about that. So he said, "Well, I'm playing the after party. I want Carol to meet you. I want you to crash the party as Carol Channing." So I thought about it and I went back and forth. And my thought was, if she doesn't like what I'm doing, I'll never do it again because I didn't have an investment in a career at that point. It was just a hobby, a side hustle that I was doing. So it didn't mean that much to me at the time. And so I got dressed at my home, I had a photograph here somewhere, but I got dressed. I showed up. And when she met me, she absolutely loved what I was doing. And because I wasn't making fun of her, I presented her as I saw her. I didn't do an exaggerated voice. A lot of people, when they, do their impressions of Carol, they will slur their S's, which she did not do. Let me tell you something about impersonation. A lot of impersonators impersonate other impersonators of the people that they're impersonating. Does that make sense? It's like when you see someone do an exaggerated Betty Davis with a cigarette. Every other impersonator that comes down the line will pick up that habit or share with the flicking the hair. There are certain iconic gestures that these celebrities have that somebody will latch onto and do it over and over and over again. I didn't do that with Carol. I I tried to mimic the voice to the best of my ability, to become her on stage and present her as I saw her. The first night that we met, I got the opportunity to do my show for her. And she said that it was a Valentine to her. She was in tears. She said no one had ever treated her with that kind of respect. And which surprised me. I mean, she would say that. And I told her that I was working on a show and that I only wanted to do the show with her endorsement. And she said, "Take the gauntlet and run with it." So I started doing my show. That took me to Atlantic City and things started taking off. And then over the course of the next X number of years, our paths kept crossing. I would be asked to appear as Carol at an event that she would be at, and we would always have our pictures taken together. The press would always go crazy over these moments. And there were many of those opportunities that kept happening. So then her third marriage had a very bad end to it. And when she remarried, she married this guy, Harry Collegian. And the night that I met Harry Collegian, I was not dressed as Carol. I went to see her perform. And when he met me, he said, "Oh my God, I'm such a fan of yours." He said, "I've watched you on the internet. I've seen you, and everyone raves about your shows and everything." And he gave me his card, which I still have framed here. He gave me his card and said, "Give us a call sometime." And I had that card in my wallet forever. I said, what am I going to call them about? So I decided to call them on Christmas morning. And Carol answered the phone and she said, "I've been waiting for your phone call." And
Wonderful.
and we talked for like an hour on the phone, which I could not believe that this was happening. And then again, I didn't make a move that she was not aware of throughout my careers as doing that. And then when I turned 50, 15 years ago, Carol's birthday is 10 days before my birthday. And she was a Christian Scientist. And she said, as a Christian Scientist, we don't celebrate birthdays. But then I said to her, "It's not about you celebrating your birthday. It's about me celebrating you." And she said, "That's the first time that made sense." So they invited me. I was going out to Palm Springs to celebrate my 50th birthday with her. I ended up performing in Palm Springs. And then when she got her star on the Palm Springs Walk of Fame, she called me and she said, "I would love for you to be here." And I asked for recommendations for places to stay. And she said, "Well, stay with us." And I stayed at her home. And until the end of her life, we got closer and closer in my office. And I hope you'll come to New York someday. My walls are covered with photographs of my time with Carol and just amazing. I was very, very fortunate to have her as a friend.
I can't wait to come see all that. I've heard such good things. I obviously have never met her or anything, but a good friend of mine, Randy Slovacek, was in the company of Hello Dolly, of course.
Lady Slovacek was the dance captain on Hello Dolly,
Exactly.
and he is the one who keeps Gower Champion's choreography alive. And I absolutely love Randy Slovacek.
He's
Would
amazing,
you
amazing.
know how much I love him?
I will. Him and his
He's been
husband, Michael, are so amazing, and they're out to New York quite a bit now, but of course, living in Vegas. And Randy's just the most genuine, nicest guy I've ever met. So he would tell me a lot of Carol stories from back in the day, but like I said, I'd never met her. So that's amazing.
I just,
Fantastic.
I hear his name, yeah. Great guy.
All right. Well, I have about three more interviews of questions, so we're going to finish up with two. I want to hear about the book you're creating together, and you've been doing this show business for so long and so many aspects of it. I want to know what still surprises you about show business, or at least in New York and all your travels. So let's start with the
Well,
book. You've been talking about this book.
I've been working on a book celebrating I wanted to write a book to celebrate the 50th anniversary of Hello Dolly, and that ship sailed. I unfortunately put all my eggs in one basket. I met someone who knew Jerry Herman, said, "Don't do anything without me. We'll put this book together." Every time I wanted to get together, there was always something else that came up and it didn't happen. The bottom line is the book did not happen. And then one day out of the blue, he called me and he said, "I don't think anyone's interested in this book." So I put the book on a back burner. I still have a website, callondolly.com. I've conducted over 1,000 interviews of people, including Randy, who were all involved with Hello Dolly, the original production, and so on. So many on the 50th anniversary, just to let you know, I threw a brunch at Sardi's in New York, and cast members from all the many productions of Dolly came to New York and were all part of this. Do Richard Skipper, Hello Dolly, Sardi's, and you'll see great photographs from all these people. But now I'm thinking I've got a new show that I'm about to debut in July called Life Lessons from Legends. And I
That
think that
title.
that's gonna be my book. I'm putting it on stage, and I just have this gnawing thing going at me saying, "This is the book to tell." Because there's so many things that I've learned, and again, not gossipy, but things that I've learned from, the people like Carol Channing, having the career that she had before the internet and how she masterminded that and what she was able to do. And then the second part of that question was, what surprises me the most? And I've said, unrelated to show business, but life in general. The older I get, the more baffled I am by human behavior. I don't like the direction that we're going in. And I'm an optimist. I'm a cockeyed optimist. And I find that with the internet and with social media, which was supposed to bring us closer together, I think it's drifted us more and more apart from each other. I mean, I love the one-on-one that you and I are having right
Sure.
now, but but there are very few people when you think about it on the horizon, on the landscape. It seems like there are thousands of people doing what you and I do. But in the scheme of things, it really isn't that large, you know, deal when you think about it. And as wonderful as you think you are, and you are, Scott, by the way, and as wonderful as I think I am, and that there's always someone out there who's, getting the upper hand on something. I look at Joe Rogan, forget his politics, but the numbers of people that tune into this man. And there's so many podcasts that I absolutely love to listen to, and I try to tune in as often as possible. But I'm baffled by human behavior. I am baffled by the disconnect that people have. And also in this business that I'm in, they will build you up and you make one misstep, one, and they want to rip you down. They want to cancel you like that.
Yes.
And, and you walk around in eggshells. You're afraid. I was having dinner last night with someone uh, actress here in New York, very well known, very successful. And she posted something that a controversial article that she saw. And she said, I couldn't believe at how many people came after me. And she said, normally I don't engage, but something struck a chord in me and I posted this article. And that's the crazy thing about this business, that people are so quick to build you up, but they want to tear you down as quickly as they made you a star. When you look
Exactly.
at someone like, let's go back to Judy Garland for a moment.
Mhm.
When Judy Garland left it, when she was fired from MGM, they wouldn't even let her back on the lot to get her makeup and her hairbrush from her dressing room. And June Allison had to go with her to get backstage after all the money that she made for the studio. They just didn't want to have anything to do with her anymore. Carol Channing was misquoted many, many years ago in an article where they felt that she was anti-LGBTQ. And I knew this woman. And I wrote a letter to the publication saying, who are you writing about? This woman has done more AIDS benefits than anyone I know. She's done more gay pride parades than anyone I know. She's appeared, during the AIDS crisis, when chorus boys talked to Randy about this. When chorus boys were dying and were very sick, she was going to the hospital and spending time with them between shows. But one person had it in him to write an article misconstruing something she said, and people just piled on her like you wouldn't believe. And she was terribly hurt by that. So I think that when someone, another interesting thing, I know I'm going on, but getting to know Carol, and the more I got to know her, the less I wanted to perform as her. And the reason for that is because I never felt that I could live up to the real person. And I think that with so many of these people, and Scott, I've been very, very fortunate. I've worked with and known a lot of celebrities in this business. And the one thing that I know that I've learned about all these people is they're human beings. They have the same fears that you and I have. They have the same ambitions that you and I have. People that can be on the top of the business today, and they're petrified that they're going to lose it all tomorrow. And that fear never, ever goes away. And it's a tough, tough business, to be in.
Well said, my friend. I love that. And as you say, since COVID, there's been a podcaster on every street corner, basically, but there's not many that do it from
Right,
heart.
right.
Not many people that do it from heart, though. I think you can tell who's genuine. A lot of people have their gimmick there. They need to be the mean, need to be the politics, they need to be whatever. And I think you can say a handful of ones like us that are doing it for the celebration of it. Richard Skipper
Yeah.
celebrates, and I do it for the joy of it. So well done on you. I like to finish every interview, Richard, with 5 goofy questions. So
And
I'm
then
going
I've
to
got
finish you.
a thing that I end all my shows with. And I could either say that before or after the 5 goofy questions.
You after the 5 goofy questions, and it'll lead into your. We're going to do a montage of Richard video on the end here. So, all right. So here is your 5 questions with Richard Skipper.
Okay.
I love to throw a dinner party, so I want to hear who would be 3 guests you would invite to dinner, living or past, that you would love just to sit down and have a great conversation over dinner.
Carol Channing, Miss Epps, who was my first mentor in South Carolina, and Maya Angelou.
Love that. What a great combination of people. Amazing. Question number 2, Richard. What is the most theatrical thing you do every day?
Get out of bed. No, I begin every day with what is called the morning pages. Julia Cameron wrote a book called The Artist Way. And she says, begin every day with the morning pages. And I set a goal each morning and I write down 3 pages. It's just whatever pops into my head. I don't censor myself. It's what I'm feeling, what I'm going through. And I do that every single morning. And I also sing around the house a lot. I've got music playing all the time.
I love that. Okay, we've heard about Sardi's and all the great places in New York. What is your go-to comfort food after a show? Where would you like to go and enjoy?
My favorite place, and I was there last night, is to go to Joe Allen's on 46th Street. Great watering hole. You can see celebrities after their shows come in. But there are two things that they have on the menu that they're really known for. Their burgers are the best burgers in the world if you like a good hamburger, and their banana cream pie. I don't I don't always have that. I don't always have it, but I just love I don't like to eat before performance. So obviously when a show is over, I'm ravenous but I just love going out with friends that have come to a show and just going in and not talking about the show, just being with the friends and celebrating the fact that they were there.
Amazing. When I come to town, we're going to Allen's banana,
Joe
anything,
Allen,
banana Foster, banana cream pie. Just throw something on a banana. And I
God,
love it.
dinner's on me.
Never
You come in
mind.
New
My
York?
treat.
No, no, you come
Right.
to New York. We're gonna go to Joe Allen's and you're gonna have the best banana cream pie that you've ever.
So excited. All right, question number 4, and we already have one of these, so I know what's not. So we have 2 left. Are you more glitter, gossip, or glamour?
You broke up for a second. Am I more what?
Are you more glitter, gossip, or glamour?
Glitter.
We knew you weren't
You're
gossip. We talked about that a couple times. Yes. Glitter. I.
glitter.
All right. And question number 5 to wrap things up here. You've done so many great performances, so many great bars and venues and show places around the country. What's your funniest audience encounter ever that you remember?
That's an easy one. I was doing a benefit for Carol Channing's Foundation for the Arts. Carol was in the audience, and I was on stage as Carol, and I'm telling how she got started in show business, but as Carol. And I said I was standing on stage at the Curran Theater in San Francisco, and I knew I was standing on holy ground. And from the audience, she goes, "It's hallowed ground." And of course, my heart stopped. And of course, everybody in the room then knew that Carol Channing was in the audience. And that was crazy. That was, and then one other time, very quick story. I knew that Carol was coming to town and I wanted to do this benefit for her. So I reached out to the venue that I was performing a lot in at that time. They had booked a private party for the night that I wanted to do the show. And of course, it was the only night that I could do this because Carol was going to be in town and would be available. And so they called the guy whose birthday party it was to see if he would be willing to move it to another night. And they told him that I was going to be performing as Carol with Carol in the audience. And he said, "I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll bring the party to the show. We have to do this." So they bring the party to the show. Then I got a phone call 2 days later from Neil Sedaka.
Oh my
And
God.
Neil Sedaka called me because he was supposed to perform at this other party. And he said, "Is there room for me to come on and do a number or two in your show?" And I said, "I'll see what I can do to squeeze you in."
That's amazing.
And so Neil Sedaka was in my show. And that night with Neil, he's saying Where the Boys Are, and he's saying, "Oh, Carol," to Carol Channing. And that to me is one of those nights that I'll never forget.
That, my goodness.
I did a party at Le Cirque, and in the audience, wait till you hear this, Donald and Ivana Trump, John Gotti, Mel DeMarco, I mean, John Lithgow, Cindy Adams. I mean, the list just goes on and on of the celebrities that were in the audience that night. I don't take any of this for granted. I have just been very, very fortunate with the people that I've gotten to know and work with over the years. I'm, I'm very, very, I feel grateful for it. And I count my blessings daily.
I am grateful for the chance to talk to you, Richard. It's been an absolute pleasure. We're going to definitely have you back. I'm definitely going to make it to New York sooner. We're going to catch up on even more of these stories. Let's finish up. Please let everyone know where they can find your website, where they can find you on social media. Give your signature goodbye, and we're going to play out to a lovely medley of clips of the one and only Mr. Richard Skipper.
Thank you so much. Well, first of all, thank you for this opportunity today. Google me, Richard Skipper. I'm ubiquitous. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. I am on X, whatever you want to call it. I'm everywhere. And feel free to reach out to me. Friend me on Facebook. Say that you saw me on Scott Fullerton's show, and I will friend you and keep you up to date, and call your favorite venue and ask me to come in. But the message that I end every show with is to go out and do something nice for somebody else without expecting anything in return. And there's a reason why I choose the number that I'm going to choose today. Come see the show and you'll know why. But go to your Facebook friends list. Most of you are on Facebook. And the 9th name that pops up, reach out today with a phone call. Not an email message, not a text message, not a private inbox message, a phone call. And let that person know the difference that they've made in your life. It's very important that you do that. And I have a dear friend, Sean Moniger, and he says, we're all in the same storm, but we're in different sized boats. And I always say, I don't care what size boat you're on, as long as you have a skipper by your side.
I love that. Richard Skipper, thank you so much. Guys, we'll see you next time right here on an all new Left of Str8 Show interviews. Have a great afternoon, everyone.
Thank you.